Under the bright lights of the Staples Center, a wave of electricity buzzed through the building like a living force. More than 17,000 fans rose to their feet as two heavyweights from opposite worlds prepared to collide. On one side, the undefeated Mexican-American brawler, Chris the Nightmare Arreola, a raw force of nature brimming with heart, hunger, and skill, and heavy hands, fighting not just for himself, but for an entire community dreaming of seeing the first Mexican-American heavyweight champion crowned. On the other side, the towering, calculating, ice-cold Ukrainian champion, Vitali Dr. Iron Fist Klitschko, holder of a granite chin, a PhD in sports science, a reputation for breaking opponents piece by piece, and an aura that blended discipline with dominance. As their walkouts began, the sound of drums, cheers, and chants merged into a single roar. Arreola came forward with emotion and fire, pacing, shaking his arms, nodding to fans who screamed his name. Klitschko entered with the calm of a surgeon walking into an operating room. Expression focused, jaw set, footsteps steady. Each man represented a different philosophy of heavyweight warfare. Arreola's pressure, recklessness, and pure desire, against Klitschko's precision, range control, and cerebral destruction. As they stepped into the ring and the referee delivered instructions, "Good, clean fight. Obey my commands. Protect yourselves at all times." The tension thickened. Gloves touched. 1,000 camera flashes erupted like lightning. And with the opening bell seconds away, the arena felt the weight of history. One fighter seeking immortality, the other determined to deny it with every ounce of skill and steel in his body. From the moment the first bell rang, the contrast between the fighters was immediate and striking. Arreola rushed forward, eager to turn the fight into a brawl. But Vitali Klitschko, as he had done throughout his championship run, used his height and reach like a seasoned general, commanding territory. His jab fired like a piston, sharp, stiff, and strategically placed to halt Arreola at the border between danger and frustration. Every time Chris tried to step in, he was met with a glove in the face or a retreating angle that forced him to reset. Klitschko rarely went to the body, but his shots to the head landed cleanly, thumping against Arreola's guard and cheeks with unsettling regularity. The Ukrainian champion began to establish a rhythm early: pump the jab, slide back, fire the right hand, clinch if needed, and never allow Arreola to plant his feet inside. Meanwhile, Arreola kept swinging, kept pushing, kept searching for a way to bridge the gulf of distance that Klitschko controlled with clinical precision. With each missed lunge, each blocked hook, and each grazing right hand that Klitschko slipped with a subtle lean, it became clear that Arreola had stepped into a fight unlike any he had experienced before. Yet the challenger didn't retreat. He kept breathing through an open mouth, absorbing jabs, weaving under punches, and banging at Klitschko's arms and body whenever he managed to get close. But the story of the early rounds was the same: Klitschko dictating pace, space, and punishment, using his long frame and technical mastery to slowly sap Arreola's momentum. As the rounds progressed, Arreola's determination remained unbroken, but his path grew even steeper. Klitschko's jab morphed into a multi-tool, scoring, measuring, and dismantling. He threw 80 to 90 punches per round, far more than a heavyweight of his size should logically manage, yet every movement looked economical, calculated, almost academic. Arreola tried everything: shifting angles, doubling the jab, attempting to jab to the body, even leaping forward to close distance. But each approach met the same fate: a jab in the face, a right hand slicing between his gloves, or a pivot that left him punching air. The commentary team noted the frustration building. Arreola was missing, his punches skimming Klitschko's shoulders or bouncing off his arms. The champion's footwork was deceptively graceful for a man of his size, allowing him to escape danger with a simple half-step backward or a subtle turn of the hips. But Arreola was relentless, pushing forward, forcing the fight to remain tense. Inside exchanges were rare, but when they occurred, Chris landed short hooks, moments that brought roars from his supporters. And still, every time he built something, Klitschko shattered it with a punishing right hand or a stiff jab that snapped his head back. By the mid-rounds, the strategy became clear. Vitali was wearing Arreola down mentally and physically. Every punch Arreola threw cost him more energy, while every punch Klitschko landed cost him more hope. Yet even bloodied, breathing heavy, and struggling to find range, Arreola refused to fade. His courage kept him marching into the storm because that was the only way he knew how to fight. Midway through the fight, the physical and emotional toll began to show starkly on both men. Arreola's face bore the signs of battle, swelling around the eyes, redness around the nose, a slight trickle of blood from the mouth. But his spirit stayed fierce. He hurled himself toward Klitschko, throwing combinations even when out of position, hoping that pressure alone might crack the champion's composure. And for brief moments, it worked. A short hook inside, a body shot that made Klitschko reset, a burst of aggression that brought the crowd back to life. Yet Vitali remained disciplined. He continued to work behind the jab, mixing uppercuts with looping rights, landing punches that weren't designed to end the fight instantly, but to gradually break Arreola's rhythm. Every exchange ended the same way. Arreola charging through fire, Klitschko stepping back and answering with precision. The commentators noticed something telling. Arreola was consistently taking small victories, but Klitschko was consistently winning the rounds. The Ukrainian's experience, especially in long fights, gave him a crucial edge, while Chris was pushing into uncharted territory, past the 8th round for the first time. Vitali looked as if he was just beginning to accelerate. His punches stayed crisp, his movement stayed smooth, and his ring awareness stayed razor-sharp. Arreola's efforts were heroic, but Klitschko's control remained absolute. And still, the challenger refused to wilt, proving his heart was as big as the punches he chased. By rounds 7 and 8, the separation in class became more apparent. Klitschko's output remained high, averaging more than 80 punches each round, landing a significant portion of them with surgical precision. Arreola's pressure never stopped, but his accuracy dwindled. He lunged more, reached more, and took more punishment as he attempted to close the gap. Still, his resilience was awe-inspiring. Every time Klitschko landed a clean right hand, Arreola took it, shook his head, and marched forward again, even if his legs briefly wobbled under him. But Klitschko's discipline was suffocating. He refused to trade recklessly. He refused to stay on the ropes. He refused to allow Arreola to build momentum. Instead, he dissected him. Jab, step back, jab, right hand, pivot, reset. The crowd began sensing the shift as Klitschko's dominance grew heavier. At ringside, Harold Letterman's unofficial scorecard read 8 rounds to 1 for the champion. Arreola's corner screamed for him to keep imposing yourself, but each attempt came with greater cost. The champion's right uppercut began sneaking through Arreola's guard, rocking his head back. The body shots, rare though they were from Klitschko, thudded deeply into Arreola's ribs. The mental fatigue was visible, even if his determination never dimmed. Arreola knew he needed something big, something dramatic, something heroic, but Klitschko's mastery of distance made landing that miracle nearly impossible. As the fight reached the late rounds, the emotional weight inside the arena grew heavier. Arreola's face was wearing the price of every jab, every right hand, every failed attempt to break through. Blood dripped from his nose, and the exhaustion showed in the slump of his shoulders between rounds. Yet every bell brought him upright again, fists raised, ready to march into the storm once more. Klitschko's face, by contrast, remained calm, barely marked, his breathing steady, his technique unwavering. He began to throw more combinations: jab, right hand, uppercut, hook, each punch further dimming Arreola's resistance. The challenger still found occasional moments, landing a hard left hook here, a body shot there, but they were isolated flashes against the steady snowfall of Klitschko's precision. The champion's footwork became even more refined. He slid away from danger with grace, pivoted around Arreola's advances, and made him miss by inches, sometimes smiling as punches sailed past him. But what made this sequence unforgettable was Arreola's courage. Even when he was clearly outgunned, even when his legs trembled, even when blood filled his mouth, he kept coming. His heart, his pride, and his desire to give everything for the moment burned through the punishment. Yet it was clear that the physical gap had grown too wide. Arreola's punches slowed, his lungs struggled, his reactions dulled. Klitschko, sensing the end, increased his volume, peppering his opponent with jabs until Arreola's head snapped back over and over. It was no longer a fight. It was a measure of how much suffering a proud warrior was willing to endure for a dream. By the end of round 10, the courageous defiance in Chris Arreola's eyes was beginning to blur. He staggered back to the corner, his chest heaving, his face swollen, his spirit still burning, but his body nearing collapse. His trainer, Henry Ramirez, placed his hands on Arreola's shoulders, staring directly into his fighter's soul. The crowd roared, but inside that corner, only one thing mattered: honesty. Ramirez had seen enough. He knew what his fighter was made of: heart, bravery, pride. But he also knew the limits of human endurance. Klitschko was landing at will now, controlling every inch of the ring, showing no signs of fading. The punches were too clean, too frequent, too punishing, and Arreola, for all his courage, had no path left but pain. As the stool was pulled away and the referee approached, Ramirez made the decision that broke his own heart. He stopped the fight, not out of defeat, but out of love. Arreola's face crumpled. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he realized his dream had slipped from his grasp, not because he lacked heart, but because he had given everything he had, and it still wasn't enough. He apologized to his family, to his fans, to his heritage. But the arena knew the truth. There was nothing to apologize for. He had fought like a warrior. He had shown the world what courage looks like. And in that painful moment, the crowd rose and applauded, not for the winner, but for the fighter who refused to surrender until someone who loved him forced him to stop. When the referee raised Vitali Klitschko's hand, the announcement echoed through the arena: winner by TKO, Dr. Iron Fist Vitali Klitschko. The champion lifted his arms high, emotionless but dignified, his performance a masterpiece of control and skill. He had not simply beaten Arreola, he had outthought him, outmaneuvered him, outlasted him, and outclassed him. Yet Klitschko showed no arrogance. He stepped toward Arreola, embraced him, and whispered respect into the ear of a man who had given him tougher psychological pressure than many expected. Arreola, visibly emotional, continued to cry, but the tears were not of shame. They were of passion, pride, and the heartbreak of a warrior whose body failed him before his heart ever would. The crowd applauded again, louder than before. It wasn't about who won or lost. It was about the story they had witnessed. Two heavyweights, two contrasting souls. One unforgettable night.